Female CEO Victoria Chen found a single dad sleeping in her office at 3:27 in the morning, clutching something precious under his jacket that would change both their lives forever. But to understand how a billionaire and a homeless father ended up in the same room that fateful November night, we need to go back to where it all began, 2 months earlier, when Victoria made a discovery that froze her to the bone and set in motion a chain of events that would either destroy her company or save her soul. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. Her phone buzzed with a text from Sophie. "Daddy says the walls are growing. Can we visit after school?" Victoria smiled, typing back, "Of course. I'll pick you up at 3:30. The arrangement had evolved naturally over the past 8 weeks. Victoria would collect Sophie from kindergarten twice a week, bringing her to the construction site so she could see her father's work. Sophie had become the unofficial mascot of the project. Charming, hardened construction workers with her endless questions and innocent observations about building castles for scientists. But today felt different. Victoria had noticed the tension in Marcus's shoulders during their morning meeting, the careful way he had avoided her eyes when discussing the timeline. Something was wrong, and she intended to find out what. Her assistant's voice crackled through the intercom. "Miss Chen, there's a Robert Caldwell here to see you. He says he's from the Chen Dynamics board?" Victoria frowned. Robert Caldwell was indeed on the board her most vocal critic, and the man who had opposed every expansion initiative she had proposed over the past year. He rarely visited the office, preferring to voice his objections through carefully worded emails and proxy votes. "Send him in," Victoria said, though every instinct told her this visit would not be pleasant. Caldwell entered with the measured stride of someone accustomed to boardrooms and power plays. He was 63, silver-haired, and wore the kind of expensive suit that announced its cost without visible labels. His expression was carefully neutral, which Victoria had learned to interpret as barely contained disapproval. "Robert?" she said, not rising from behind her desk. "This is unexpected." "Victoria." He settled into the chair across from her without invitation, placing a manila folder on the desk between them. "I think it's time we had a conversation about your recent hiring decisions." Victoria's stomach clenched, but she kept her expression impassive. "I assume you're referring to Marcus Sullivan." "I am." Caldwell opened the folder, revealing a collection of photographs and documents. "Did you think no one would notice that you hired a homeless man you found sleeping in your office? That you're providing him with corporate housing and involving his child in company activities?" The photographs showed Marcus and Sophie at various Chen Dynamics locations: the construction site, the corporate cafeteria, Victoria's office. Someone had been watching them, documenting their interactions with the thoroughness of a private investigator. "Mr. Sullivan is an experienced construction project manager," Victoria said, her voice steady, despite the anger building in her chest. "His hiring was based entirely on his qualifications." Caldwell leaned forward, his expression shifting from neutral to predatory. "Come now, Victoria. A man with an 18-month employment gap? Who was literally homeless when you found him? This isn't about qualifications. This is about whatever misguided guilt you're feeling about your daughter's death." The mention of Emma hit Victoria like a physical blow, but she refused to show weakness. "Be very careful, Robert. The board is concerned," he continued, ignoring her. "Warning. Your judgment has been questionable since the accident. First, you threw millions at that environmental initiative that yielded minimal returns. Now you're playing house with a janitor and his sick child, using company resources to fund your little charity project." Victoria stood slowly, her hands flat on the desk. Marcus Sullivan has brought the research facility project in under budget and ahead of schedule. His work has been exemplary. His work is irrelevant if it compromises the company's reputation, Caldwell said. Do you have any idea how this looks? The CEO of a major corporation, still unmarried 3 years after her daughter's death, suddenly adopting a maintenance worker and his child? The rumors are already starting. Victoria felt cold fury wash over her. What rumors? Caldwell smiled, the expression carrying no warmth. That you're having some kind of breakdown. That you're using company resources for personal therapy. That perhaps you're not fit to continue leading this company. He reached into his briefcase and pulled out another document, sliding it across the desk. The board has asked me to present this to you. A motion for a vote of no confidence, to be held at next month's meeting. Victoria stared at the document, seeing her name typed in cold legal language alongside accusations of compromised judgment and misuse of corporate assets. Her hands trembled slightly as she read, but not from fear, from rage. This is about Marcus, she said. You want me to fire him. I want you to demonstrate that you can still make rational business decisions. Caldwell replied. Ev. Terminate Sullivan's employment. End this inappropriate relationship with his family. Return to focusing on what's actually good for the company instead of using it as your personal healing center. Victoria looked at the photographs again, seeing them through Caldwell's calculating eyes. Marcus lifting Sophie so she could see the construction equipment. Victoria and Sophie sharing ice cream in the company cafeteria. The three of them walking together toward Victoria's car, looking for all the world like a family. What's the timeline? 12 die, she asked quietly. 2 weeks, Caldwell said. Clean this up within 2 weeks, and I'll recommend that the board table the motion indefinitely. Refuse, and we'll proceed with the vote. Caldwell had been building opposition to her leadership for months, waiting for the right moment to strike. Her relationship with Marcus and Sophie provided him with the perfect ammunition. A story that could be spun as either nepotism or emotional instability, depending on the audience. Get out of my office, she said. Caldwell stood, straightening his tie with deliberate care. You have 2 weeks, Victoria. I suggest you use them wisely. After he left, Victoria sat alone in the silence of her office, staring at the photographs spread across her desk. In them, she saw herself smiling in a way she hadn't since Emma died. She saw Marcus looking at her with trust and growing affection. She saw Sophie treating her like family, like someone who belonged in their world. And now, she had to choose between protecting that fragile happiness and protecting the company she had spent 15 years building from nothing. Her phone buzzed again. Another text from Sophie. Mrs. Patterson says you're coming to get me today. I drew you a picture of the building Daddy is making. Victoria closed her eyes, feeling the weight of impossible choices pressing down on her chest. She thought of Marcus sleeping on her office floor, protecting his sick child with nothing but love and determination. She thought of the pride in his voice when he talked about the research facility. The way he had thrown himself into the work, with the passion of someone finally given a chance to use his skills again. She thought of Sophie's innocent trust. The way the little girl had decided Victoria was family, and held on to that belief with the fierce loyalty only children possessed. At 3:30, Victoria stood outside Sophie's kindergarten, watching children stream out of the building in a chaos of backpacks and laughter. She spotted Sophie immediately. The little girl always looked for her car first thing, her face lighting up when she saw Victoria waiting. "Princess!" Sophie called, running toward her with a drawing clutched in her small hand. "Look what I made!" The drawing showed the construction site, with stick figures that were clearly meant to be Marcus, Victoria, and Sophie, standing in front of a building that stretched toward a smiling sun. At the bottom, in Sophie's careful kindergarten handwriting, were the words, "My family builds things together." Victoria's throat tightened as she studied the simple drawing that captured something she hadn't even admitted to herself. Somewhere over the past 2 months, these two people had become her family. Not the family she had planned or expected, but the family she had found when she needed it most. "It's beautiful," Victoria said, kneeling to Sophie's level. "Should we go see how Daddy's building is coming along?" The drive to the construction site was filled with Sophie's chatter about her day. But Victoria found herself only half listening. Her mind was spinning through scenarios, trying to find a way to protect both her company and the people she had come to love. At the site, Marcus met them at the security gate, his face brightening when he saw Victoria's car. He had been working in the sun all day, and there was dirt on his clothes and satisfaction in his expression. This was Marcus in his element, doing work that mattered, building something lasting. "How are my two favorite girls?" he asked, helping Sophie out of the car and accepting her enthusiastic hug. Victoria watched the easy affection between father and daughter, noting how much more confident Marcus had become over the past weeks. The man who had slept on her office floor, broken by circumstances beyond his control, had been replaced by someone who stood tall, who looked directly at people when he spoke, who had remembered what it felt like to be valued for his skills. "Daddy, I drew a picture of your building," Sophie announced, showing him her artwork. Marcus studied it with the serious attention he would give architectural blueprints. "This is excellent work. Very accurate proportions." As they walked through the site, Marcus pointed out various aspects of the construction process, translating complex engineering concepts into terms Sophie could understand. Victoria found herself genuinely interested in the details, the way Marcus had solved drainage issues that weren't apparent in the original plans, the modifications he had made to improve energy efficiency, the careful attention to safety protocols that had kept the project injury-free. "Foundation will cure for another week," Marcus explained as they stood before the emerging structure. "Then, we can start on the frame. We should be ready for the roof by Christmas." "Will it be finished before my birthday?" Sophie asked. Her 6th birthday was still 4 months away. "Probably not completely finished," Marcus said, "but it'll be close. Would you like to come to the opening ceremony when it's done?" Sophie nodded enthusiastically, then looked at Victoria. "Will you come too, Princess?" If you're enjoying this story so far, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe. Drop a comment telling me where in the world you're watching from. I love hearing from you. Victoria felt her chest tighten. In 4 months, would she still be part of their lives? Or would she have been forced to choose between her company and her family? Forced to break apart something beautiful to save something she had built from ambition rather than love? "I hope so, sweetheart," she said, the words feeling like a promise she might not be able to keep. That evening, after Victoria had dropped Marcus and Sophie back at their apartment, she sat in her penthouse, staring at Caldwell's ultimatum. The legal documents seemed to mock her from the coffee table, a choice between everything she had worked for and everything she had found. Her phone rang, displaying Marcus's name. "I hope I'm not calling too late," he said when she answered. "Not at all. What's on your mind?" There was a pause, and Victoria could hear Sophie giggling in the background, probably being tickled before bedtime. "I wanted to thank you," Marcus said, "for today, for the job, for everything. Sophie's teacher says she's been different since we moved into the apartment, more confident, more secure, and I feel like myself again for the first time since Emma died." Victoria closed her eyes, Marcus's gratitude making her chest ache. "There's something else," Marcus continued. "I know you didn't just hire me. because you needed a project manager. I know you did it because you saw that Sophie and I needed help, and you have a heart bigger than anyone realizes. I want you to know that means everything to me. Marcus, let me finish, he said gently. I'm falling in love with you, Victoria. I know the timing is complicated, and I know there's a lot to figure out. But I needed you to know that this isn't gratitude talking. This is a man who has found someone who makes him want to believe in happy endings again. Victoria felt tears spill over, the words she had been afraid to hope for arriving at the moment when they might be impossible to act upon. Then why do you sound like you're saying goodbye? The question pierced straight to the heart of her dilemma. Victoria looked at the legal documents on her table, at Sophie's drawing propped against a lamp, at the reflection of her own tear-stained face in the dark windows. Because sometimes, loving someone means protecting them from the choices you have to make, she said. She wanted to tell him everything about Caldwell's ultimatum, about the board's vote, about the impossible choice between her company and their future. But the words stuck in her throat. How could she burden him with the knowledge that her love might cost him everything he had worked so hard to rebuild? Nothing that can't be handled, she lied. I should let you get Sophie to bed. Victoria, good night, Marcus. Give Sophie my love. She hung up before he could respond, before she could lose her resolve and tell him the truth. Outside her windows, the city glittered with the lights of millions of lives continuing their ordinary courses, unaware that 42 floors up, a woman was trying to figure out how to choose between her head and her heart. The next morning, Victoria arrived at the office to find Marcus waiting outside her door, still in his work clothes, but with an expression of determined concern. We need to talk, he said, without preamble. Victoria's stomach clenched. Marcus, I'm busy today. No. He followed her into the office, closing the door behind him. Something was wrong last night, and don't try to tell me it was nothing. I've learned to read people's voices, Victoria. Especially yours. Victoria sat behind her desk, using the familiar barrier to maintain distance. It's a work issue. Nothing that concerns you. Marcus pulled out his phone and set it on her desk. On the screen was a news article from a business blog with the headline, Chen Dynamics CEO's Questionable Judgment, Mixing Business with Personal Charity. Victoria's blood ran cold. The article contained quotes from anonymous board members expressing concern about her leadership, along with several of the photographs Caldwell had shown her. The tone was just subtle enough to avoid outright accusation, while painting her as emotionally compromised and Marcus as an opportunist taking advantage of a grieving woman's instability. When were you going to tell me? Marcus asked, his voice quiet but strained. It's not your problem to solve, Victoria said. Like hell it isn't. Marcus leaned forward, his expression intense. You think I don't understand what's happening here? Someone wants you to fire me to prove you're still capable of making tough business decisions. Victoria couldn't meet his eyes. Marcus. And you're actually considering it. The accusation hung in the air between them like a blade. Victoria looked up at him, seeing hurt and disappointment warring with understanding in his expression. It's not that simple, she said. It's exactly that simple, Marcus replied. Either you believe what we have is worth fighting for, or you don't. Victoria stood, moving to the windows to avoid his searching gaze. You don't understand the position I'm in. This company employs 3,000 people. It's not just my life's work. It's their livelihoods. If I lose control of the board, if someone else takes over, there could be layoffs, budget cuts, project cancellations. So you'll sacrifice us to save everyone else. I'll protect what I can protect, Victoria said, her voice breaking slightly. You and Sophie can rebuild your lives. You're strong enough, skilled enough, you'll be fine without me." Marcus was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke again, his voice was soft but firm. "You're wrong about something, Victoria. We won't be fine without you. Not because we need your money or your job offers, but because we love you. Sophie asks about you every morning when she wakes up. She draws pictures of our family and puts you right in the center. And me? I haven't felt whole since Emma died. But when I'm with you, I remember what happiness feels like." Victoria pressed her forehead against the cool glass of the window, watching traffic move through the streets below, like blood through arteries, everything connected, everything depending on everything else. "Don't you think I know that?" she whispered. "Don't you think this is tearing me apart?" Marcus moved to stand beside her, close enough that she could feel his warmth but not touching. "Then, fight for us," he said. "Whatever they're threatening, whatever they want you to choose between, fight for what we have. I've spent 2 years believing that love wasn't enough to overcome circumstances. You've shown me I was wrong. Don't prove yourself right by walking away now." Victoria turned to face him, seeing the man who had protected his child with nothing but determination, who had rebuilt his life from nothing, who had taught her that strength wasn't about facing everything alone. "What if I lose?" she asked. "Then we'll figure out what comes next together," Marcus said. "But Victoria, what if you win?" "What?" Before she could respond, Victoria's assistant's voice came through the intercom. "Miss Chen, Sophie's school is on line 1. They say it's urgent." Victoria's blood turned to ice. She grabbed the phone, Marcus tensing beside her. "This is Victoria Chen," she said. "Miss Chen, this is Principal Morrison at Sophie's school. Sophie had an accident on the playground. She's conscious and stable, but we've called an ambulance. Can you contact her father?" "We're on our way," Victoria said, already grabbing her keys. Marcus was out the door before she finished hanging up, both of them running toward the elevator with the single-minded focus of parents facing every parent's worst fear. At the hospital, they found Sophie in a pediatric examination room, her left arm in a temporary splint, and her face streaked with tears. She brightened when she saw them, reaching out with her good arm. "Daddy! Princess!" I fell off the monkey bars. Dr. Martinez, the same pediatrician who had treated Sophie's pneumonia, looked up from his examination. "It's a clean break of the radius. Painful but straightforward. She'll need a cast for 6 weeks, but there shouldn't be any long-term complications." As the doctor explained the treatment plan, Victoria found herself holding Sophie's uninjured hand while Marcus stroked her hair. They moved in perfect synchronization. Two people united by their love for this brave little girl who faced even broken bones with more courage than most adults brought to minor inconveniences. "Will I be able to draw?" Sophie asked, the question that mattered most to a 5-year-old artist. "Absolutely," Dr. Martinez assured her. "In fact, you'll have a cast that everyone can sign. It'll be like having a guest book on your arm." Sophie perked up at this possibility. "Can you sign it first, Princess?" Victoria felt tears threaten again. "I'd be honored to." As they waited for the orthopedic specialist to apply Sophie's cast, Victoria's phone buzzed with calls and emails. Word of her absence from scheduled meetings was spreading through the company, and she knew Caldwell would use even this emergency as Astase's evidence of her misplaced priorities. Marcus noticed her checking her phone and gently took it from her hands. "Whatever it is, can wait," he said quietly. "Sophie needs us right now." Victoria looked at him, then at Sophie, who was explaining to a nurse about how her daddy built castles for scientists and how the princess lived in the tallest tower in the city. In this sterile hospital room, surrounded by the controlled chaos of pediatric medicine, Victoria felt more centered than she had in her corner office, with its commanding view of Manhattan. This was what mattered. Not board votes or stock prices or corporate reputations. This little girl who called her princess, and this man who had shown her that love was still possible after loss. "Marcus," she said, "when we get home, I want to tell you about Robert Caldwell's visit yesterday." Marcus nodded, understanding passing between them. "And I want to help you figure out how to fight back." "Together?" "Together," Marcus confirmed. "If you're hooked on this story, make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss an upload. Your support means everything and helps me bring you more emotional stories like this one." 2 hours later, Sophie sported a bright purple cast decorated with the signatures of Victoria, Marcus, 3 nurses, and Dr. Martinez himself. She held her arm up proudly as they walked to Victoria's car, chattering about how all her classmates would be jealous of her colorful cast. "Can we get ice cream?" Sophie asked as Victoria buckled her seatbelt. "Daddy says ice cream makes broken bones heal faster." "I never said that," Marcus protested with a laugh. "You said it makes everything feel better, and feeling better helps healing," Sophie corrected with 5-year-old logic. Victoria met Marcus's eyes in the rearview mirror. "Ice cream it is," she said. At the ice cream shop, Sophie attracted attention from other children who wanted to examine her cast and hear the dramatic story of her fall from the monkey bars. Victoria and Marcus sat at a small table, watching Sophie hold court with the confidence of someone who had turned misfortune into social currency. "She's incredible," Victoria said. "She gets it from her mother," Marcus said. "Emma had this way of finding something positive in every situation. When she was in the hospital for weeks at a time, she would focus on the nurses who made her laugh, or the way the sunrise looked through her window." Victoria studied Marcus's profile as he watched his daughter. "Do you ever wonder if Emma would approve of us?" Marcus considered the question seriously. "I think she would be grateful that Sophie has another person to love her. And I think she would be happy that I found someone who makes me want to be the best version of myself. Even if that someone comes with complications?" And Marcus turned to meet her gaze. "Especially then. Emma always said that anything worth having required courage." Victoria reached across the table and took his hand. They spread Caldwell's documents across the dining room table, while Sophie colored at the coffee table, her cast propped on a pillow. Victoria explained the ultimatum, the board's concerns, and the timeline she was facing. Marcus listened without interruption, his expression growing more thoughtful with each detail. "So, Caldwell wants you to fire me to prove your judgment isn't compromised," he said when she finished. "That's the basic idea." Marcus leaned back in his chair, studying the documents with the analytical mind that had made him an excellent project manager. "What if we give him what he wants?" he said finally. Victoria stared at him. "What?" "What if you fire me? But in a way that actually demonstrates your excellent judgment, rather than your willingness to be bullied." Victoria felt confused and slightly betrayed. "Marcus, hear me out," he said, leaning forward with growing excitement. "The research facility project is ahead of schedule and under budget, right?" "Yes. And the work speaks for itself. Any objective evaluation would conclude that hiring me was a smart business decision." "Of course. But, so what if you don't just fire me? What if you promote me?" Victoria blinked, trying to follow his logic. "I don't understand." Marcus pulled out his phone and opened the voice recorder app. "I've been documenting everything about the research facility project. Every decision, every cost-saving measure, every innovation we've implemented. What if we present that to the board not as evidence of your compromised judgment, but as proof of your ability to identify talent in unexpected places. Understanding began to dawn on Victoria's face. You want me to fire you from the construction job and offer you a permanent position as Director of Project Development? Exactly. Make it about business results, not personal relationships. Show them that you didn't hire a homeless man. Out of guilt, you identified an experienced professional who was temporarily displaced by circumstances and gave him an opportunity to prove his value. Victoria stared at him, seeing the brilliant strategy taking shape. But that would mean, I'm no longer your charity case, Marcus said. I'm your business partner, someone you hired because they could deliver results. Not because you felt sorry for them. Victoria felt excitement building in her chest. And the housing arrangement? Temporary corporate housing. While I got back on my feet, Marcus said. Standard practice for relocating executives. Nothing unusual about it. Victoria stood and began pacing, her mind racing through the implications. It could work, she said. If we present it right, frame it as strategic hiring rather than emotional decision-making. We make Caldwell's attack look like exactly what it is, Marcus continued. A personal vendetta against a CEO who had the vision to see value where others saw only problems. Victoria stopped pacing and looked at Marcus with something approaching awe. You're willing to risk this? If it doesn't work? If the board doesn't buy it? You could lose everything. Marcus stood and moved to where Sophie sat coloring, resting his hand on her small shoulder. Sophie, what did Mommy always tell us about taking risks? She said, you can't win if you don't play. Marcus smiled and returned to Victoria. Besides, I'm not risking everything. I'm fighting for everything. There's a difference. Victoria felt tears prick her eyes. And if we're wrong? If Caldwell manages to convince the board anyway? Then we'll face whatever comes next as a family, Marcus said simply. But Victoria, we can't let fear make our decisions for us. You taught me that when you offered me this job in the first place. Victoria looked at the man who had entered her life, sleeping on her office floor, protecting his sick child with nothing but love and determination. Now he was offering to risk his newfound security to protect her company and their future together. Okay, she said. Let's do it. For the next week, Victoria and Marcus worked 18-hour days preparing their presentation for the board. They compiled cost analyses, safety records, timeline comparisons, and testimonials from the construction crew. Marcus created a comprehensive proposal for the Director of Project Development position, complete with salary requirements and performance metrics. Sophie spent the week being shuttled between the apartment, Victoria's office, and the construction site. Her purple cast, accumulating signatures from engineers, architects, and executives who had come to see her as the project mascot. The night before the board meeting, Victoria lay awake in her penthouse, staring at the ceiling and trying to quiet her racing mind. Her phone buzzed with a text from Marcus. Whatever happens tomorrow, I want you to know that you've given Sophie and me something we thought we'd lost forever. Hope. Victoria typed back. You've given me something I thought was gone forever too. A family. The response came immediately. Always. The morning of the board meeting, Victoria dressed with more care than usual, choosing a navy suit that projected authority and confidence. She had slept perhaps 3 hours, but adrenaline kept her sharp and focused. Marcus arrived at the office 2 hours before the meeting, carrying a leather portfolio and wearing a suit Victoria had never seen before. New outfit? She asked. Borrowed from the men's store downtown, Marcus admitted. The owner's son goes to school with Sophie. When he heard what we were trying to do today, he insisted on loaning me something appropriate for a Director of Project Development. Victoria smiled. touched by the support they had found in unexpected places. Ready? Ready. Chen Dynamics boardroom occupied the entire east side of the 42nd floor. With windows overlooking the city and a conference table that could seat 24 people. 12 board members were present for the emergency session, their expressions ranging from curious to hostile. Robert Caldwell sat at the far end of the table, his face wearing the satisfied expression of someone who believed he was about to watch his opponent self-destruct. Victoria took her place at the head of the table. Marcus beside her, their presentation materials arranged with military precision. "Thank you all for attending this emergency session," Victoria began, her voice steady and professional. "I've called this meeting to address concerns that have been raised about my recent hiring decisions and to present information that I believe will clarify the situation." She opened the folder in front of her, producing copies of Marcus's employment record, the research facility project reports, and financial analyses showing the cost savings his work had generated. 8 weeks ago, I hired Marcus Sullivan as project manager for the Chen Dynamics research facility construction. Some of you have questioned this decision, suggesting it was based on emotion rather than business judgment. I'd like to present evidence to the contrary. For the next 20 minutes, Victoria and Marcus walked the board through every aspect of the research facility project. They showed how Marcus's modifications to the original design had improved energy efficiency by 15%. They documented the safety protocols he had implemented that had kept the project accident-free. While similar projects in the city had experienced multiple injuries, they presented testimony from subcontractors praising his coordination and problem-solving abilities. The research facility is currently 3 weeks ahead of schedule and 12% under budget, Victoria concluded. These results speak to the quality of Mr. Dunn, Sullivan's work, and the soundness of my decision to hire him. Caldwell leaned forward, his expression skeptical. Miss Chen, while Mr. Sullivan's work may be satisfactory, the concern is about your judgment in hiring someone you found sleeping in your office. The optics are exactly what they should be. Victoria interrupted smoothly. The optics of a CEO who can recognize talent regardless of circumstances. Mr. Sullivan is a highly qualified professional who was temporarily displaced by personal tragedy. Rather than allowing that talent to be wasted in the service industry, I identified an opportunity to utilize his skills for the benefit of this company. Marcus stood, his presentation materials in hand. If I may address the board directly? Victoria nodded, and Marcus moved to the front of the room with the confidence of someone who had run dozens of project meetings. My employment gap was the result of caring for my terminally ill wife and young daughter, he said, his voice clear and professional. During that time, I chose family over career advancement, a decision I would make again without hesitation. However, that choice left me temporarily outside my field when circumstances changed. He opened his portfolio and began distributing additional documents to the board members. What you have in front of you is a proposal for a new position at Chen Dynamics, Director of Project Development. This role would oversee all future construction and infrastructure projects, ensuring they meet the high standards we've established with the research facility. Murmurs rippled around the table as board members reviewed the comprehensive proposal. This isn't about charity, Marcus continued. This is about Chen Dynamics positioning itself as a company that values results over appearances, that can identify talent in unexpected places, and that isn't afraid to make unconventional decisions when they serve the company's interests. Victoria watched the faces around the table, noting the shift from skepticism to interest as board members processed Marcus's proposal. Even Caldwell looked less certain than he had when the meeting began. Board member Janet Richardson, the head of the audit committee, raised her hand. "Mr. Sullivan, what makes you think you can transition from managing a single project to overseeing multiple complex developments?" "Because that's exactly what I did in my previous position," Marcus replied confidently. "Before my wife's illness, I was senior project manager at Hartwell Construction, where I simultaneously oversaw residential developments, commercial buildings, and municipal infrastructure projects worth over $50 million annually." He provided additional documentation showing his track record, letters of recommendation from previous employers, and examples of projects he had successfully managed. "The skills are transferable," Marcus continued. "Whether you're building homes or research facilities, fundamentals remain the same. Coordinating resources, managing timelines, maintaining quality standards, and solving problems as they arise." Victoria felt a surge of pride watching Marcus command the room. This was the professional she had glimpsed beneath the desperate circumstances of their first meeting, confident, competent, and completely comfortable defending his qualifications. Board member Thomas Walsh spoke up. "What about the personal relationship between you and Miss Chen? How do we address potential conflicts of interest?" Victoria had been expecting this question. "Mr. Walsh, Chen Dynamics already has comprehensive policies regarding personal relationships between employees. Mr. Sullivan and I would be subject to the same disclosure requirements and ethical guidelines that apply to any other professional relationship within the company." "And if the relationship doesn't work out?" Caldwell asked pointedly. Marcus answered before Victoria could respond. "Then I would expect to be evaluated on my professional performance, just like any other employee. Personal relationships may end, but professional obligations continue." For the next hour, the board grilled both Victoria and Marcus on every aspect of the proposal. They questioned budgets, timelines, reporting structures, and performance metrics. Through it all, Marcus demonstrated the analytical thinking and problem-solving abilities that had made him successful before tragedy disrupted his career. Finally, Janet Richardson called for a recess so the board could deliberate privately. Victoria and Marcus waited in her office, the tension palpable between them. Sophie's drawing still sat on Victoria's desk, a reminder of what they were fighting to protect. "Whatever happens," Victoria said, "I want you to know that I'm proud of how you presented yourself in there. You were magnificent." Marcus took her hand, squeezing gently. "We were magnificent. This is what partnership looks like, Victoria. Whatever they decide, we face it together." 30 minutes later, they were called back to the boardroom. Janet Richardson stood at the head of the table, her expression unreadable. After extensive discussion, she began, "The board has reached a decision regarding both the motion of no confidence and Mr. Sullivan's employment status." Victoria held her breath, Marcus's hand steady and warm in hers. "We find that Miss Chen's hiring of Mr. Sullivan was based on sound business judgment and has yielded measurable benefits for the company," Richardson continued. "The motion of no confidence is hereby withdrawn." Victoria felt her knees nearly give out with relief. "Furthermore," Richardson continued, "the board approves the creation of the Director of Project Development position and authorizes Miss Chen to offer that position to Mr. Tain Sullivan, contingent upon standard background checks and reference verification." Around the table, board members nodded their agreement. Even Caldwell, though he looked as if he had swallowed something bitter, raised no objection. "There is one additional condition," Richardson added. "Given the unique circumstances of this situation, the board requests quarterly reviews of all projects under Mr. Sullivan's supervision for the first year. These reviews will ensure that both personal and professional relationships remain appropriate and productive." "Agreed," Victoria said immediately. Richardson smiled for the first time since the meeting began. Then, I believe we can consider this matter resolved. Mr. Sullivan, welcome to Chen Dynamics in your new capacity. As the board members filed out of the room, Victoria and Marcus remained seated, barely able to believe what had just happened. They had not only survived Caldwell's attack, but emerged stronger than before. Caldwell paused as he passed their seats. "This isn't over," he said quietly. Marcus stood, extending his hand with professional courtesy. "Mr. Caldwell, I look forward to proving to you that Miss Chen's judgment was sound. The results will speak for themselves." Caldwell stared at the offered hand for a moment, then shook it briefly before leaving without another word. When they were finally alone in the boardroom, Victoria turned to Marcus with tears streaming down her face. "We did it," she whispered. "We did it," Marcus confirmed, pulling her into his arms. They held each other in the empty boardroom. Surrounded by the detritus of corporate warfare, scattered papers, empty coffee cups, the lingering tension of a battle fought and won. But for Victoria, the room felt filled with possibility, with the promise of a future she had been afraid to imagine. "What happens now?" she asked. Marcus smiled, the expression transforming his entire face. "Now we go pick up Sophie from school and tell her that Daddy has a new job, building castles for scientists, and that the princess is going to help. And after that, we go home, all of us, to the same place." Victoria felt her heart expand to accommodate a happiness she had thought lost forever. "I love the sound of that." "Good," Marcus said, "because I'm hoping to make it permanent." He pulled a small velvet box from his pocket, and Victoria's breath caught in her throat. "Victoria Chen," he said, dropping to one knee in the Chen Dynamics boardroom, surrounded by windows overlooking the city she had conquered through sheer determination. "Will you marry me?" Victoria stared at the ring, simple, elegant, perfect, and thought of the journey that had brought them to this moment. A desperate father, sleeping in her office to protect his sick child. A grieving woman who had forgotten how to hope. Two broken people who had found each other in their darkest moments and chosen to build something beautiful from their shared pain. "Yes," she said, her voice breaking with joy. "Yes, absolutely, yes." Marcus slipped the ring onto her finger, and Victoria marveled at how right it felt, how complete she felt for the first time since Emma died. When they picked up Sophie from school that afternoon, the little girl spotted Victoria's ring immediately. "Princess," she exclaimed, "you have a sparkly ring like the ones in fairy tales." "I do," Victoria said, kneeling to Sophie's level. "Your daddy asked me to marry him." Sophie's face lit up with pure joy. "So, we're going to be a real family?" Victoria looked at Marcus over Sophie's head, seeing the same happiness reflected in his eyes that she felt in her own heart. "We already are a real family, sweetheart," Victoria said. "Now we're just making it official." Sophie threw her arms around Victoria's neck, her purple cast bright against Victoria's dark suit. "I love you, Princess. I love you too, Sophie," Victoria whispered, meaning it with every fiber of her being. As they walked together toward Victoria's car, Sophie between them, chattering excitedly about wedding plans and flower girl dresses, Victoria reflected on how dramatically her life had changed. 3 months ago, she had been sleeping alone in her penthouse, haunted by grief and hollow success. Now she was part of a family, engaged to a man who challenged her to be better, planning a future with a little girl who had taught her that love could survive even the deepest loss. The city stretched around them, full of millions of stories, millions of people searching for connection and meaning. But Victoria felt like the luckiest person in all of Manhattan, because she had found her people, her purpose, her home, not in a penthouse overlooking the city, but in the arms of a man who had taught her that strength came from love, not independence. In the laughter of a little girl who had shown her that family wasn't about blood, but about choice. In the recognition that sometimes the best things in life came disguised as problems to be solved. Victoria had built an empire from nothing, conquered markets, and outmaneuvered competitors. But her greatest achievement would always be this: learning to love again after loss, choosing hope over fear, and discovering that the most important construction project of all was building a family from 3 broken hearts and the courage to try again. Thank you so much for watching until the end. If you loved this story, check out the other videos on your screen now. I think you'll really enjoy them. And don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already. See you in the next story.